The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has expressed concern over the growing early campaigns by politicians in clear violation of extant laws. While the Commission says the practice poses threats to the country's democracy, it claims it cannot punish the parties who have started campaigning early for the 2027 general election. INEC Chairman Mahmood Yakubu told a stakeholders meeting in Abuja that the Electoral Act prohibits campaigns earlier than 150 days before voting, but it does not set penalties for breaking this rule. He added that while politicians are holding rallies, putting up billboards and running ads ahead of the legal period, INEC's hands are tied because the law only fines campaigns within 24 hours before election day. Let's unpack this issue with a constitutional lawyer, Jide Ologun, who is with me in the studio. Thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure.
We are also joined by election observer and political analyst, Achike Chude. Thank you for joining us tonight as well. Let me just start with you, Mr. Achike. What does the INEC chairman mean when he said the commission is constrained to act when political parties or politicians violate extant laws with the early campaigns? He actually provided a perspective which I would like you to expand on.
Well, the INEC chairman seems to be giving us the impression that if they were not constrained by law in terms of the punitive actions that will be carried out against violators, that they will willingly go ahead to prosecute such people. That's the implication of that. Obviously, he's not happy with what is going on because he cites reasons why it is not in the best interest of the country. He talks about, governance suffering as a result when politicians, especially elected public office holders, should be concentrating on governance and providing, the so-called dividends of democracy to the people. For the people, they are busy campaigning, and that it distracts them, from their responsibilities. So the impression is that if INEC had that, provision of the law that ensures that such violators will be punished, that they will go ahead and they punish such people. But that is not exactly true. If you look at the records, if you look at what has been going on, there are all manners of violations with regards to elections, before elections, pre-election, even during the process of election itself. Whether it has to do with the buying of votes or the selling of votes, and there are all manners of unwholesome, actions and activities that are at variance with the spirit and the law of the electoral law. You find out that INEC has not exactly been able to do anything about all of these deviations. So it is easy to say, look, if we had the law on our side from the punitive angle, that we would have done that. But the reality is that in other aspects, because if you look at the electoral law, virtually every violation has a punishment attached to it. Some of them involve a jail term. Some of them involve, payment of fines or both, as the case may be. But how many people who have, violated the electoral guidelines during elections, people who cut away ballot boxes, people who are caught, stuffing ballot boxes, people who, are selling votes and buying votes, or some of those people that have been caught, how many of them have been successfully prosecuted by INEC? And look, it is very clear that INEC is not very keen when it comes to such matters. They want to be let off the hook. They don't want to get involved in some of these matters. So of course, they will also tell you that their roles, even in this, is limited because they are not the ones that will take suspects to court. It is the duty of the police. And so, go on.
Yeah, you do have a valid point when you talk about the fact that even the ones that they do have authority over, enforcement is an issue. But let me come to you and talk about electoral reforms and review. The National Assembly is currently reviewing our electoral laws, and Mr. Mahmood Yakubu is of the view that the National Assembly will give due consideration to this part of the law, that maybe review it to include punitive measures or recommendations that will compel people to adhere, maybe like the 24 hours before voting. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. I align myself with the concerns of the chairman of INEC. If you look at Section 94 of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended, subsection 1 talks about 150 days before election for the campaigns, and it should end 24 hours before the real election. But while we don't have any penalty for the 150 days requirements, there is a penalty of 500,000 naira only for still campaigning within the 24 hours window. And I consider this as very, sickening. And it's a good thing it's coming to the front burner now. And let me say this, INEC itself is a creation of the Constitution. If you look at Section 153 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, and Section 1 of the Electoral Act 2022 as amended also recognizes the role of INEC. And INEC is to conduct elections, monitor the parties and the activities, campaigns, funding, and of course, carry out necessary redress if we have breaches. But here we are now, INEC is in a state of being lame to enforce sanitizing the electoral processes. And this has given politicians a leeway. But that is not to say that we have a hopeless situation.
Yeah, because that was where I came in when I asked about the electoral reforms and his call for the National Assembly.
That has not really attended to it. But if you go to Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, it empowers the National Assembly to make laws for the peace, orderliness, and good government in Nigeria. You see, so they have the power to amend the laws of the land, to exercise the power of curbing electoral malpractices. But alas, what did we notice recently? They were moving in the direction of compelling all eligible voters to vote for them without considering the transparency, the credibility of the processes that the chairman is alluding to now. Because one of the key elements of law is sanction. So if you have a law without sanction, you practically do not have a law.
Yeah, and that's what Mr. Achike Chude was also talking about, the weakness of INEC in that regard. But I'll come back to you. Hold on to that thought. Let me go back to Mr. Chude and just ask about the enforcement aspect of it. He talked about finance, campaign funding, that these actions by these politicians make it difficult for INEC to, do due diligence, provide that oversight function as to monitor campaign funds. What are the implications of this when we talk about knowing what we spend for election, reducing the cost of campaigns and all of that?
Again, the provisions are very clear with regards to how much different candidates for the various categories of elections should pay, or, should spend. They are not expected. There's a cap for each of these people, from the president to governors to members of National Assembly and State House of Assembly and all that. There's a cap. But the issue is these are caps, that have been exceeded by thousands of percent, percentage points over the years, and everybody knows. In fact, it's not just INEC talking about tracking campaign finances. Civil society organizations have been doing that for quite some time. Okay. Virtually in every election, they have been doing that. And it is very, very obvious that they are spending far in excess of what the law provides. But what exactly has happened? So it's easy for the INEC, chairman to say all of this. But he knows that even when, at the best of times, when they track campaign finance and they see that these caps are being violated, they find themselves incapacitated to do anything about that. And that is exactly what INEC would prefer, if you ask me. INEC would prefer the Election Petition Tribunal to be set up. They have expressed that desire for quite some time, so that people will not bother them with prosecution of
Mr. Chude, I'm sorry to interject yet again. I'm told we have barely 2 minutes to wrap up. I'd like Mr. Ologun to also have his time and talk about the aspect of legalizing some of this punishment and enforcement in 40 seconds, if you can.
You know, it's wise that INEC should lobby the National Assembly. But the big hurdle here is that quite a number of those in the National Assembly may be beneficiaries of these electoral processes breaches. You know, the early campaigns and different kinds of violations. But we need to position this country on the platform of respecting the rule of law. Like I said earlier, the lawmakers should be seen to make the appropriate laws in the land. And those who implement the laws also, talking about the executive, should be ready to implement the laws just as much as the judiciary should be diligent and allow justice in their own part of the ecosystem. And if we do this, I think it will send a signal to those who just want to dance on the face of the rule of law that no, you cannot do that, because we are not in a lawless society.
Indeed, hopefully we're not. Thank you very much, Mr. Ologun, for being here. Mr. Chude, thank you for obliging us as well.